Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, members and their guests, the National Press Club today welcomes as its honoured guest Mr. Adam Malik, the Foreign Minister of Indonesia. Mr. Malik is a world figure, well known to many of you. This is his third visit to Australia. He was here last year with President Suharto, and on that occasion we regretted that due to the necessity to curtail his program, the President was unable to accept an invitation to address this club. Mr. Malik has had a long and distinguished career, too varied for me to mention in all detail here today, but I would like to specifically mention that he was the founder of the Indonesian national newspaper Antara. He was a founder and member of the executive board of the Merba Party, later ambassador to Russia and Poland, and then a Minister of Trade. In 1965 he became Minister Coordinator for the implementation of guided economy. The next year he became second Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister and was a co-founder of ASEAN. He was President of the United Nations General Assembly in 1971. The club today also welcomes Mrs. Malik, who also is a member of the Indonesian Parliament, and to those members of Mr. Malik's official party. I now invite Mr. Malik to address the club.
Mr. Hawkins, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your kind introductory remarks as well as for the splendid luncheon you have arranged for me and my party today. It gives me great pleasure indeed to meet all of you here in the course of my third visit to Australia today. As I stated on my arrival in Sydney, my visit is not intended to solve any problems between our two countries, for happily we have none. Nor have I come to negotiate any particular issue. I have come to strengthen even more the existing relationship of friendship and mutually beneficial cooperation between our two countries, and if possible, to expand them to cover even wider fields of common interest. The talks I have had with leaders of your government, as well as with members of the opposition, have convinced me of the basic convergence of ideas and objectives in the policies of all respective governments with respect to such vital issues as national development, regional cooperation, and the problems of the stability and progress of the East Asia Pacific region. We have also just had our second annual meeting between senior officials of Australia and Indonesia, which again showed how valuable such periodic consultations are, not so much because they will lead to any spectacular changes in policies on either side, but because, being basically in agreement on fundamental issues, Australia and Indonesia need to consult frequently to ensure that the understanding each has of the perception of the other is accurate and up-to-date. Yesterday, I had occasion to have an exchange view with Foreign Minister Willacy of instrument of ratification on the two agreements on the seabed boundaries between Australia and Indonesia. As I remarked yesterday on that occasion, this exchange marks another important milestone in the relationship between our two neighboring countries. I hope that in the very near future we will be able to ratify a third agreement on the boundaries, and as you may already know, I will be flying to Port Moresby on Sunday, among other things, to sign an agreement covering border regime arrangement between PNG and Indonesia, specifically the province of Irian Jaya. Although we know that in the relationship between nations, no amount of written documents or agreements can guarantee friendship and mutual understanding. We also know that agreements such as this do anchor our relationship on a solid foundation of mutual trust and mutual appreciation of each other's rights and aspirations. It is not my intention to proceed my question and answer session with you with any full-fledged political speech. It is my experience that it is often frustrating to you to have to listen to a long speech containing all things you already know or did not wanted to know in the first place. And I know you are ready to pounce on me with lots of other questions anyway. Let me therefore simply say that my exchange with Australian leaders have been wide-ranging and, as always, characterized by frankness and complete understanding of each other's interests and perceptions, especially on those questions of direct concern to us concerning the region we both live in. Australia and Indonesia share the realization that the pace of transition through which our world is moving today will inevitably engender vast and fundamental change in the political and power configuration of the world, and that there is no other region in the world that will be so much affected by these changes as our region. We have also come to realize, however, that apart from fluidity and uncertainty in the situation, this transition also provides the small and medium nations of this region the opportunity to come together in order to gird themselves to face future change and to try to ensure that those changes will not again become a pattern dictated solely by the interests of the major powers. We have come to share the conviction that the present atmosphere of detente should not only cover certain regions or specific interests alone, nor should it lead to either collusion among the major powers to restructure the world according to their needs of mutual accommodation or to indifference towards the aspiration of the smaller countries. It is clear that in facing the present international constellation, governments have to reassess and readjust their policies, if only to remain in step with the demands of the time. Indonesia welcomes the reiteration and readjustment of policies which the Australian government has effected in recent years, for we see them as a logical evolution towards the attainment of Australia's legitimate goals and perceptions for a better and more secure future for her people. Indonesia's policy has always been one based on an independent and active approach towards international problems, and therefore fully understand Australia's present posture and policies in this respect. I am confident, therefore, that Australian-Indonesian cooperation will continue to expand and deepen to the mutual benefit of our two countries, as well as in the interest of our region as a whole, on the basis on which they have developed so far, namely on equality, mutual respect, non-interference, and sincere friendship. I will be happy now to answer your question as best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. I now invite questions of our media members. Will they please identify themselves and the names of their organisation.
David Barnett from the Australian Associated Press. I wonder what your current feelings are about the Australian concept for an Asia-Pacific grouping, a political grouping. In February this year, you were rather less sympathetic to this idea than you now appear to be. Could you say whether you currently would support such a proposal?
Bagi Indonesia sebagai anggota United Nations, tentu kita melihat perkembangan dunia ini dari kepentingan tiap-tiap negara, besar atau kecil.
For Indonesia, as a member of the United Nations, the view on the world should be based on the perception of interest that is held by each country, whether big or small.
Kemudian kita pindah kepada kerjasama dalam tetangga, sub-region.
thus we view the problem of cooperation among neighbors, regional cooperation,
or better sub-region.
better sub-regional cooperation.
Kemudian sesudah sub-region ini bisa dikerjakan bersama-sama, baru dia pindah kepada region yang lebih luas.
We believe that if we have succeeded in making sub-regional cooperation work, we may be in a better position to make wider regional cooperation work.
Kalau kita lihat contohnya umpamanya ada di Iran, Turki, dan Pakistan. Itu merupakan satu sub-region.
If I may cite you a few examples, Iran, Turkey, and Pakistan have a sub-regional organization.
CRD. They call it CRD.
CRD, they call it.
And then ASEAN, Southeast Asian Organization.
The Southeast Asian nations have a sub-regional organization, ASEAN, as you know.
Dan sekarang kalau kita melihat keadaan di South Pacific, perlukah atau tidak satu region seperti yang sudah ada di beberapa negara? Menurut saya, sudah waktunya.
And if we now look at the situation in the South Pacific, the question arises whether perhaps a sub-regional organization of the same kind could be necessary there. In my view, the time may have come for such a sub-regional organization.
Karena itu ide dari New Zealand, Australia, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, maupun negara-negara pulau-pulau yang lainnya, sudah waktunya kita bicarakan dan di mana perlu, saya kira sudah dapat dibentuk.
I therefore think that a sub-regional organization that may possibly group together Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea in the future, and perhaps other independent countries in the South Pacific may be a feasible organization to think about, to start thinking about now.
Bob Bedino.
Dr. Malik, could I ask, Bob Bedino News Limited, could I ask, was Indonesia consulted before Mr. Whitlam? Sorry, was Indonesia consulted before Mr. Whitlam went to Peking? If not, would it have liked to be consulted? And thirdly, are you concerned at all or nervous about Australia's growing relations with Peking?
Sebetulnya ini tentu tidak sopan kalau dia memajukan consultation kepada Indonesia karena kita berlainan dan bersama-sama Zofre.
I don't think it would be proper to ask for Australia to consult Indonesia before she goes to Peking. We are both sovereign, so why should she consult us?
Malahan dalam ASEAN yang merupakan satu region tidak ada kemestian ini.
Even within ASEAN, where we have very close regional cooperation, we don't consult each other on everything.
Sebab masing-masing berdaulat.
Because we believe we are all sovereign nations.
Kemudian tentu saja pertanyaan kedua, apakah saya atau Indonesia apakah sedikit kaget dengan hasil atau kunjungan dari Perdana Menteri Vietnam ke Peking? Ya, saya dengan satu perkataan boleh mengatakan tentu saja tidak.
As to your second question, whether we are, in your words, a bit nervous about Prime Minister Whitlam's visit to China, I could very shortly say, not at all.
Kalau
Ken Randall, I think, a little hard to say.
Ken Randall from Newsweek. Mr. Minister, the journalists in this country have been concerned for some time about the plight of their professional colleagues in Indonesia. Could I ask you whether, at this stage of your government, given the very wide powers you have over communications and the press in Indonesia, it's necessary to curb the activities of some of, or so many, of your leading journalists by keeping them in jail?
Saudara-saudara tentu tahu bahwa saya ini lebih banyak hidup saya dalam dunia komunikasi, mass media atau dengan satu perkataan dalam jurnalisme.
As many of you perhaps know, I've spent the better part of my life as a journalist.
Jadi oleh karena itu, setiap apakah itu dari pemerintah yang lama, apakah yang sekarang, setiap tindakan yang mempersempit usaha pers ini tentu selamanya saya berusaha itu mencegahnya.
So I can tell you that whether it was during the previous government or now, I have consistently opposed any action or policy that would restrict the freedom of journalists in my country.
Tapi tentu saudara-saudara juga, seperti saya juga, setiap wartawan di tiap negeri itu mempunyai satu tugas yang paling berat, yaitu tanggung jawab sebagai wartawan.
But as you will also agree with me, journalists all over the world, also in your country, have a very heavy responsibility in performing their task.
Saya tunjukkan contoh responsibility ini, umpamanya bagi satu negara yang memerlukan menaikkan kehidupan rakyatnya secara wajar. Dan kalau kita sebagai wartawan menulis yang mengatakan bahwa rakyat ini bodoh dan tidak sanggup, ini saya kira sudah melanggar tugas kita sebagai wartawan.
If I can give you one example, one simple example, for a nation that is devoting all-out efforts in order to increase its standard of living, it would be detrimental indeed if there were writings in the press that would picture or doubt the people's capacity to develop itself.
Jadi oleh karena itu, saya harap kepada penanya ini, jika ada bukti-bukti yang mempersempit atau yang mungkin membatasi kegiatan pers di Indonesia, ya katakanlah supaya saya juga ikut membantu untuk menghapuskan atau meringankan beban yang dirasakan berat tadi.
So I would simply ask the questioner on this score that he provide me with any specific instances where, in his view, the rights or the freedom of movement of Indonesian journalists are at present being restricted, so that I myself can try to correct this, because I'm personally vitally interested in this.
Andrew Clark.
United Press International, sir. My question concerns what some people call the related incident of the successful revolution by students in Bangkok, the subsequent rioting by students in Bandung from the Institute of Technology. On the incidents of the 5th of the August in Bandung before, these riots were blamed on communists. Don't you think that this is a little bit of a facile explanation of the situation, and that the real reason perhaps could be the greater disparity between wealth and poverty in Indonesia?
Pertama tentu mengenai aktiviti atau perkembangan mahasiswa di Bangkok, saya tentu tidak akan mau mencampur ini.
Let me first say that I am not in a position, of course, to comment on the background of the activities and the student demonstrations in Thailand.
Komentar saya cuma satu, setiap mahasiswa bergolak dimanapun, apakah di Indonesia, apakah di Bangkok, apakah di Soviet Uni, apakah di mana saja, ini tanda bangsa itu hidup.
I have only one comment, and that is, wherever there is student movement or student demands, it only shows that the situation in that country is very much alive.
Bahwa masyarakat itu hidup.
That the society is alive.
Yang penting tentu supaya dapat dijuruskan kepada perkembangan yang demokratis.
The important thing then is that to channel those activities into constructive purposes.
Constructive democratic.
And democratic purposes.
Pertanyaan mengenai di Indonesia juga demikian. Sebab setiap gerakan mahasiswa di Indonesia, setiap pergolakan mahasiswa di Indonesia, selalu juga mereka konsultasi, atau sebelumnya mereka datang pada saya, atau sesudahnya juga datang mereka bertukar pikiran.
The same remarks apply to conditions in Indonesia. I can tell you that at all student movements, every time the student moves for certain demands, they have always talked with me. If not consulted, at least told me what was in their minds and what they wanted to see us achieve.
Dan yang mengenai di Bandung, sebetulnya kalau saudara penanya tadi maksudkan peristiwa 5 Agustus, sama sekali tidak terlibat mahasiswa di sana.
And specifically with regard to Bandung, if you study the situation well, in fact, no students were involved in the Bandung
5 August.
On the 5th of August.
Yang sesudah Bangkok itu ada gerakan yang dari Bandung timbul karena ada suara dari Jakarta seolah-olah tidak boleh berambut panjang. Karena itu mereka marah, turun menanyakan apakah ini polisi pemerintah.
Subsequent activities of students, which coincided after Thailand, were on the issue of long hair. There was a government.
One of the government
officials was quoted as being opposed to long hair, and the students took to the streets and to made some demonstration as to whether it was proper to have such a regulation banning long hair.
Jawab saya kepada mereka, saya seorang menteri dan rambut saya panjang sama dengan saudara, jadi tidak ada peraturan.
I told them that I'm a minister and I have long hair. Tapi mengenai Bandung.
Warren Duncan.
Mengenai
Bandung.
Warren Duncan, ABC. Dr. Malik, you told a group of us in your home earlier this year in February that you'd be quite happy for Papua New Guinea to be a member of ASEAN, because Torres Strait was the boundary. Why should Australia not become a member of ASEAN? Would you support that? And wouldn't this fulfil some of Mr. Whitlam's aspirations for greater cooperation in the region?
Memang pada permulaan saya setuju sekali tadinya membawa Papua New Guinea yang akan merdeka ini dalam sfer ASEAN. Tetapi beberapa negara dari ASEAN itu menganggap bahwa Papua New Guinea itu sudah terlalu jauh. Geografis mereka mengatakan ini lebih dekat pada South Pacific. Itulah sebabnya saya lebih senang membawa satu sub-region organisasi yang baru di mana kepentingan Papua New Guinea, kepentingan Indonesia, kepentingan Australia, dan kepentingan New Zealand dan lain-lainnya dapat kita gabung bersama.
It's true that at the beginning I was for the proposition to have an independent Papua New Guinea enter ASEAN, but I now have I now have the feeling, or it has been made. It has been told to me that the other members of ASEAN might not think Papua New Guinea as properly belonging to the geographical Southeast Asian area, that they saw Papua New Guinea more properly belonging to the South Pacific region. I therefore have come to believe that there might be sufficient grounds to think in terms of having another sub-regional arrangement covering countries in the South Pacific, including Papua New Guinea, Australia and New Zealand, and Indonesia.
Jadi dengan demikian ada interlocking antara sub-region ASEAN dan sub-region South Pacific.
In this way also, perhaps we could effect an interlocking between two sub-regional organizations, the ASEAN on the one hand, and an eventual South Pacific sub-regional organization on the other.
If you discussed that proposal with the Australian government during your visit here, and what sort of reception it got?
Saya bicarakan ini dengan Perdana Menteri New Zealand, dan di sini saya belum bicarakan oleh karena saya anggap ini biarlah antara New Zealand dan Australia yang membicarakannya. Kemudian saya singgung sedikit dengan Menteri Luar Negeri Wellesley.
The question came up in my talks with Prime Minister Kirk of New Zealand. I did not raise the question officially with the Australian government at this moment because I feel that we ought to give some more time to think and to develop this very tentative idea. I can tell you though that we touched on it very briefly in my meeting with Foreign Minister Wellesley.
Mr. Hardwick.
Howard Knight, Circuit Siding, sir. You were quoted after your arrival in Sydney as saying that you do not consider China a threat to Southeast Asia anymore. This contrasts somewhat with President Suharto told the Times in August, saying that he still has some doubts about China's intentions and he still thinks that China meddles in internal affairs, particularly in Indonesia. Could you elaborate on this?
Memang tidak ada alasan saya sekarang ini mengatakan bahwa People's Republic of China itu sebagai satu ancaman, oleh karena saya bertemu dengan mereka secara official di Paris dan berbicara beberapa jam, dan kami mendapat konklusi dan berjanji bahwa mereka tidak akan mencampur urusan dalam negeri-negeri di Asia Tenggara terutama. Artinya dia tidak ada keinginan untuk ekspor revolusinya.
I can tell you that I have less grounds now to see China as a direct threat to Indonesia, since the meeting which I had with Foreign Minister Chi Peng-fai a few months ago in Paris. During the talks which I had with him, I had his assurances that China was not interested in subverting the region of Southeast Asia or in subversive activities towards Indonesia.
Jadi keterangan resmi ini tentu harus kita sambut secara resmi.
Of course, this official explanation is to be officially acknowledged.
Brian Johns, I think.
Dr. Malik, Brian Johns from the Sydney Morning Herald. The sub-regional organisation that you outlined seems to be much more restricted than the organisation Mr. Whitlam suggested. So from your remarks, it still seems to me that you're not supporting Mr. Whitlam's idea of a regional organisation. For instance, you didn't mention China at all. Now, a supplement, just to further to that, if you are in favour of a new regional organisation, are you prepared to take an early initiative on it?
Supaya jangan ada confusing.
In order to avoid confusion now,
saya sudah mengatakan dari semula ada sub-regional cooperation, ada regional cooperation, dan ada cooperation yang lebih luas lagi, tingkat-tingkatnya.
I've always seen a distinction between sub-regional organization, a wider regional cooperation, and even larger groupings of cooperation between nations.
Jadi kalau yang dimaksudkan oleh penanya mengenai larger regional cooperation, yaitu dicetuskan oleh Perdana Menteri Whitlam di Jakarta pada bulan Februari, ini memang masih di dalam pembicaraan terus-menerus.
So if the questioner refers to the larger economic cooperation that was touched upon or brought forward by Prime Minister Whitlam during his visit to Jakarta in February, then I can tell him that this idea is still being discussed between all countries of the region.
Bahkan waktu pertemuan saya kemarin dengan Perdana Menteri, saya tanyakan juga, apakah tidak lupa Perdana Menteri menanyakan pikiran Chou En-lai?
In fact, when I met Prime Minister Prime Minister Whitlam, during our talks, whether on the occasion of his visit to China, he had occasion to ask Prime Minister Chou En-lai on his ideas about such kind of regional cooperation.
Tapi dengan minta maaf, jawabnya ini saya belum mau sampaikan kepada saudara-saudara.
But I apologize to you that I cannot reveal his answer to me on that score.
Dari itu alasannya oleh karena kita sedang berusaha terus.
The reason is because we continue this discussion and dialogue toward such a wider regional cooperation.
Karena itu Indonesia dari semula pada waktu bulan Februari tidak pernah kita mengatakan kepada Perdana Menteri Whitlam keberatan, malahan kita sokong.
And I would like to remind you that from the outset, in February, Indonesia never opposed the idea of a wider regional cooperative scheme. In fact, we supported it.
Include China.
And including the eventual participation of China.
Soalnya sekarang, bagaimana melaksanakan ide yang luas ini?
The problem only is how to implement such an idea for regional cooperation.
Satu contoh yang praktis saja. Andai kata semua negara di Asia sudah setuju broad regional cooperation ini, umpamanya diadakan di Peking, banyak negara yang belum mengadakan hubungan dengan Peking. Jadi praktis tidak bisa dilakukan.
Suppose all countries of this wide Asian region, Asia-Pacific region, were to agree on such a regional cooperation, and a meeting is going to be held in Peking. Many countries would have difficulty to go to Peking. They don't even have diplomatic relations yet with Peking.
Jadi ini persoalan prinsip dapat diteruskan dan dapat diusahakan pelaksanaannya, tapi waktunya belum bisa kita tentukan sekarang.
So I can reiterate to you, in principle, we are all agreed on the necessity of having a wider regional cooperative scheme. It is a matter of time when to implement it and how.
John Lombard.
Minister, and my question touches a subject that is slightly outside your portfolio, but I'd be interested in your answer. I understand that there have been moves in Indonesia to make big reductions in your armed forces. I want to know, is this being done for economic reasons or merely because you want to reduce the influence of the army in Indonesian life?
Pertanyaan ini tentu sudah dijawab sebetulnya oleh yang bertanya. Pertama ditanyakan apakah ini alasan ekonomis? Memang. Apakah alasan mengurangi pengaruh yang kuat dari tentara? Juga masuk.
Your question actually already contains the answer. Yes, they are designed for economic purposes, and they are also designed to reduce inordinate influence of the armed forces on politics.
Saya bisa tambahkan alasan yang ketiga, untuk memperkembangkan kecepatan ekonomi kita, lebih produktif pasukan-pasukan yang banyak ini dikembalikan kepada masyarakat bekerja dalam bidang produksi.
I can add that we found it to be much more productive if armed forces personnel are returned to society in order to engage in developmental activities rather than remain active in the armed services.
Ditambah lagi satu faktor baru, yaitu situasi tendensi di dunia sekarang ini adalah ke arah keinginan damai dan menjauhkan peperangan.
I can also add our perception that the world today is moving towards a greater belief in détente, in more peaceful coexistence among nations rather than for war.
Mr. Malik, could I just take that up before I was going to ask you a question or two on defence. The recent Australian government's strategic assessment of threat to Australia has been put at roughly a period of no threat for 15 years. I realise that we're further south than you. Does your government see such an assessment of no direct threat to your country in such a period or less? And secondly, could I ask you, while on defence, we have had a deal of discussion on defence cooperation in recent times, and there have been some naval communication exercises and some sabres that we've given your government. What I was particularly interested is, how close are we to joint army exercises between your government, either here or there?
Sebetulnya yang mengenai kerjasama militer antara Australia dan Indonesia, saya akan jawab lebih dulu.
I would first like to address myself to your second question on the cooperation between the armed forces units
supaya
of Australia and
supaya
Indonesia.
jangan ada kontradiksi antara keterangan saya yang kepada saudara penanya di sebelah kanan tadi, bahwa dunia ini tendensinya perdamaian.
So that there is also no contradiction to my previous answer to your colleague just now, that we do see the world as a world moving towards détente rather than
Tapi ini tidak berarti bahwa dunia ini akan damai, jadi rumah kita pun kita biarkan dengan tidak ada pengamanan. Ini juga saya kira tidak benar.
We believe that détente notwithstanding, the world will not be a completely peaceful world for a long time to come. So we have to be able to keep at least our house in reasonably stable and peaceful conditions.
Nah, untuk inilah kerjasama di antara Australia dan Indonesia sangat perlu, oleh karena Australia dan Indonesia satu keluarga yang sangat dekat, dalam artian kepulauan yang begitu banyak, dan juga terbuka lautnya.
It is in this context that Indonesian-Australian cooperation in certain aspects of defense should be seen, because we feel that we have common problems, we belong to the same region, and there is much to say for close cooperation in several fields.
Malahan ini akan kita kembangkan sampai yang sangat rapid.
In fact, we intend to increase such cooperation in future to cover as many fields as possible and desirable.
jika kedua negara itu bersetuju tentunya.
If indeed, of course, there is agreement between the two countries.
Soalnya dalam menjaga daerah yang begitu luas, tentu tidak bisa kita lihat dari kapal udara saja, tidak bisa kita lihat dari kapal-kapal saja, atau tidak bisa hanya exercise angkatan laut dan angkatan udara.
Of course, to cover such a wide area of space between our two countries and covering both our territories, it would perhaps not suffice to only have occasional exercises among our navies or our air forces.
Malahan nanti harus kita kembangkan satu sistem yang paling efektif buat menjaga daerah kita ini dari menit ke menit sampai kita mengetahui semua gerakan ya pencuri-pencuri yang mau masuk ke rumah bisa kita ketahui secara computerized.
And perhaps there will arise a need in future that we augment our capacities to have as near perfect surveillance of our vast shores of all alien movements into our territory.
Tentu saudara-saudara mengetahui bagaimana perkembangan dunia teknik yang sekarang dengan macam-macam alat. Mereka bisa melihat negeri saudara, bisa melihat negeri saya, dan sedang kita tidak bisa melihat. Tentu kita harus kembangkan yang sama.
Of course, everybody is aware how great the progress has been in science and technology in this respect, and how many countries, advanced countries, already possess the capability to know what is happening not only on the borders of their own region, but in other countries as well. We still lack that capacity, and I think we ought to fill that gap.
Pertanyaan yang pertama mengenai threat, mengenai ancaman. Sebetulnya ancaman yang ditanyakan itu ada dua rupa. Memang ada ancaman yang langsung, artinya ada invasi, dan ancaman yang tumbuh atau ditumbuhkan di tiap-tiap negara ini.
As to your first question, we must make a distinction between the nature of the different threats to our country. There is the threat of open attack, conventional warfare, so to speak. There is the threat of a threat towards a country that is fomented from within very often.
Subversion.
That which is subversion.
Jadi untuk ini pun dalam kerjasama Indonesia Australia dua-dua tentu maksudnya kita cover.
And in our cooperation between Australia and Indonesia, both aspects should be considered.
Tentu yang mengenai dalam negeri diatur masing-masing negeri.
The threat that with regard to the internal situation should be tackled, of course, internally by each of the country.
Tapi tentu kita bisa bertukar laporan.
But we can exchange information on how we face those problems. Tapi jawab.
I'm sorry, Alan Lloyd.
Lloyd, ABC, Mr. Minister.
Sorry.
Dia bilang 15 tahun nggak ada.
Ya, mengenai waktu, apakah benar bahwa dalam 10 atau 15 tahun tidak ada ancaman? Ini teoretically susah menjawabnya, oleh karena kita belum tahu faktor yang semuanya di dunia. Tapi tendensi yang tumbuh di dunia sekarang, saya juga yakin bahwa 10-15 tahun ini orang akan memelihara perdamaian.
As to the timing, as the time frame of the threat you were talking of course it is difficult now at this moment to decide precisely whether to determine precisely whether there will be no threat, open attack within 10 to 15 years. But I do tend to believe that given the present trends in the international situation, there will probably be no threat of an open, overt attack on the countries of the region for the next 10 to 15 years.
Lloyd, ABC, Mr. Minister. Do you see Indonesia as a South Pacific nation or a Southeast Asian nation? Your proposals for the sub-regional grouping, as I understood them, had Indonesia in both camps.
Ya, ini secara geografis tentu boleh dibilang untung, boleh dibilang rugi bagi Indonesia.
Well, geographically speaking, perhaps we could say that Indonesia is either lucky or unlucky, depending on from what angle you see.
Oleh karena dilihat dari luasnya daerah yang meliputi geografi Indonesia ini, dia bisa masuk dalam organisasi Indian Ocean satu, dia bisa masuk dalam Southeast Asia, dia bisa masuk dalam South Pacific.
Because considering the vast territorial expanse of Indonesia stretching from west to east, Indonesia can belong properly to an Indian Ocean sub-regional cooperative scheme, to a Southeast Asian regional cooperation scheme, and a South Pacific cooperative scheme.
I think gentleman next to Brian Johns. Next one, Brian.
Sydney Morning Herald. Mr. Minister, is Indonesia seeking more military equipment from Australia, patrol boats, for example, and maritime surveillance aircraft?
Surveillance aircraft. Is Indonesia seeking from Australia?
Sebetulnya yang diberikan oleh Australia kepada Indonesia itu baru satu skuadron dari Sabre. Dan ini maksudnya tidak untuk peperangan, sama sekali adalah untuk meneruskan training yang sudah kita peroleh dari MiG-21, MiG-19, dan juga dari kapal-kapal terbang jet lainnya.
In fact, what has occurred is only shipment of one squadron of Sabre from Australia to Indonesia. And I can assure you that they are not for war purposes, but rather to continue the training of Indonesian pilots in the flying of jets, because in the past they have had their training on MiG type aircraft, and they will have to continue their proficiency in handling jets.
Ditambah lagi belakangan ini ada patrol boat dapat 5 dari Australia. Ini juga harus saudara-saudara lihat dari kepentingan pengamanan pantai-pantai.
And recently we received, I believe, 5 patrol boats from Australia. And this also should be seen in the context of our desire to ensure the safety and the security of our coastal areas from economic threats or intrusions into our region.
Brian Terry, sorry.
Dr. Malik, have you received any approach from Japan to boost oil supplies to Japan following the Middle East war? What would your attitude be towards any such approach? And secondly, how do you see your decision to boost supplies to the United States as affecting your stand in the Middle East?
Pada waktu belakangan ini memang ada mungkin satu salah pengertian atau salah menangkap keterangan-keterangan mengenai minyak ini, mengenai minyak Indonesia.
I noticed that recently there has been some confusion in the press on the question of Indonesian oil supplies.
Saya ingin menjelaskan kepada saudara-saudara bahwa kita mempunyai program jangka panjang.
I want to make clear to you that the Indonesian government has a long-term program of development in the oil industry.
Dan ini sedang berjalan.
And this is currently going on.
Antara lain ada yang kerjasama dengan Australia, ada yang sama dengan Jepang, ada yang sama dengan Amerika, ada yang sama dengan beberapa negara.
In this context, we have cooperative endeavors in the oil industry with Australia, with Japan, with the United States, and with many other countries.
Jadi kalau timbul peperangan di Middle East sekarang, kemudian ada politik minyak, politik boykot minyak, ini sama sekali tidak mempengaruhi planning kita.
So with the outbreak of hostilities in the Middle East, I can tell you that they have not influenced our long-term program on oil development in our country.
Kemudian saudara-saudara tentu harus mengerti, minyak ini tidaklah seperti barang yang bisa diciptakan setiap hari produksinya seperti keinginan kita.
You must also understand that production of oil is not a thing that can be increased as quickly as we want to. It takes time to have oil production increased.
Jadi oleh karena itu biarpun saudara-saudara dari Australia, biarpun saudara-saudara dari Amerika atau dari Jepang ingin hari ini minyaknya ditambah, tidak mungkin.
So even if, say, Australia or Japan or the United States wants more oil from us, we simply are not in a position to do so.
Jadi oleh karena itu kita tidak menyangkutkan diri kita dengan perkembangan minyak yang tajam sekarang di Middle East. Kita terus dengan program kita meningkatkan melaksanakan program peningkatan produksi kita dalam semua lapangan ini.
So therefore, I would like to stress that one should not confuse Indonesia's development of its oil production with the current Middle East crisis. We will continue our oil production increases according to the long-term plan which we have made up for several years now.
Harold Fry.
Times, Dr. Malik, I wanted to ask you if the Indonesian government or the Indonesian people have any difficulties at the moment or foresee any future difficulties in maintaining adequate food supplies for the Indonesian people.
Ya, mengalami memang persoalan food problem ini adalah sangat sensitif di Indonesia oleh karena selama ini kita hanya memusatkan makanan rakyat itu pada beras.
The food problem in Indonesia is indeed a sensitive problem, and therefore we have devoted utmost energy and attention in the past few years to the problem of rice production.
Dan ini sulitnya, mulai kita merdeka, sebenarnya produksi itu meningkat.
The problem we face is this, that since independence, actual rice production in our country has increased year by year.
Tetapi kenaikan produksi ini lebih cepat lagi kemauan rakyat makan lebih banyak.
But with that increase, there has been an even greater increase in consumption of rice by our people.
Kemudian ditambah lagi dengan belum berhasilnya kita membatasi kelahiran. Jadi kalau dilihat dari angka-angka kelahiran, maka bertambah lagi orang yang ingin bertambah perut yang ingin makan beras.
Coupled to this is our problem of having not been able yet to push down our birth rate. So you can imagine the combined effect of accelerated growth of our population and increased demand for specifically one commodity, which is rice as staple food for the Indonesian people.
Saya tunjukkan satu contoh. Saya datang dari satu daerah pulau di Sumatera. Rakyat di sana sebelum merdeka itu tempo-tempo satu hari cuma makan 2 kali beras. Tapi karena merdeka, mereka menganggap kemerdekaan ini satu hal yang memaksa dia, berhak dia untuk makan 3 kali beras.
I can give you an example. I come from a region in Sumatra where we usually eat only twice a day rice and have additional other food in between. But now with independence, my region and other regions in Indonesia the people there feel that with independence there ought to come the right to eat 3 times a day rice.
Kita berusaha keras pemerintah sekarang ini untuk meyakinkan rakyat bahwa dalam beras tidak begitu banyak kalorinya. Kita ingin mengganti menu, tapi ini teoritis, mudah dikemukakan. Tapi bagaimana meyakinkan rakyat yang sudah ratusan tahun memakan beras dan menurut kepercayaan dia di sana ada kekuatan, cukup kalori.
The government has been trying very hard to launch an educative program on nutrition, telling the people that rice actually is not very nutritive. They could easily complement it with other more nutritional values and so on. But this is all good in theory. The people think rice is the thing and they want to eat rice.
Jadi oleh karena itu kita sekarang berusaha mencari jalan untuk mempercepat proses penanaman padi ini dengan memberikan kesempatan kepada rakyat Indonesia maupun kepada foreigner untuk membuka rice project.
We therefore have decided to start on a program of establishing greater areas of rice growing, the so-called
rice estate
program, opening the opportunity to both domestic as well as foreign entrepreneurs to move into the field of large-scale rice production, mechanized.
Jadi kalau ada saudara-saudara di sini yang ahli beras, ya ini menanam modal sebentar, dalam masa 2 tahun sudah kembali uangnya.
So if among you there are some experts on rice growing, I can tell you with not too much capital you will have a good yield in return.
Within 2 years.
Please invest in Indonesia.
Within 2 years.
Within 2 years.
Max Welch.
Walsh from the Financial Review, Dr. Malik. These are two unconnected questions, but they refer to answers you've given earlier. To Mr. Tui, you spoke of the fact there'd been no change in Indonesia's long-term production policy for oil supplies in view of what had happened in the Middle East. There have been reports, and as you have said, there has been some confusion in the press. There has been reported you are increasing supplies to the US and to Holland. Long-term production aside, has the Middle East changed your short-term delivery pattern? That's the first question.
Sebenarnya saya mendapat kabar dari New York. Sumbernya ini dalam satu upacara di New York mengabarkan bahwa Indonesia akan memberikan tambahan increase produksi minyaknya untuk membantu Amerika karena Middle East. Begitu juga pada Belanda. Ya, inilah yang tidak benar. Tidak mungkin kita memberikan, walaupun ada keinginan kita, tidak mungkin menurut produksi yang ada sekarang.
Well, I can inform you that I have received some cabled reports that to the effect that at a meeting or at a celebration of Pertamina in New York, some remarks were attributed to an high Indonesian official there, as if Indonesia was going to supply, send extra supplies to America or to the Netherlands. This has been officially denied now. We simply cannot do so. That was what I was trying to explain. Physically, we cannot do so, even if we wanted to.
Your next one. Good, Dr. Malik. Thanks very much for that. The second bit refers to the answer you gave to Mr. Johns in respect to the regional grouping which Mr. Whitlam refers to, and you saw as an obstacle the position of Peking and the recognition of Peking by certain ASEAN countries. Could you tell me what sort of timetable you see in respect of ASEAN countries recognising the Peking government, and what are the main obstacles in the path of this recognition now?
Sebetulnya bukan merupakan satu hambatan yang prinsipil, oleh karena semua negara-negara ini sudah bersetuju untuk menormalisasi hubungannya dengan Peking.
Actually, I don't see it as an obstacle of principle, of time. I would like to stress that. Because, in principle, all ASEAN nations have agreed to normalize relations with China.
Hanya menunggu waktu pelaksanaan dari tiap-tiap negara.
Only in its timing, we leave it to the individual countries to determine when they would move towards such a normalization in the light of their own internal requirements.
Nah, itu sebabnya saya melihat bahwa waktu masih diperlukan.
That is why also I'm stressing on the time factor on effecting a wider regional cooperative scheme.
Nah, kemudian sekarang kita juga masih terus membicarakan kalau kita mau mengadakan kerjasama yang luas ini, apakah Soviet Uni ikut? Apakah Amerika ikut?
Then of course, apart from this one example as I mentioned earlier in my answer, there are other factors we ought to give thought to as to the membership of the wider regional organization. First question, should the Soviet Union be in it? Yes or no? Should the United States be in it? Yes or no? On what grounds? And so forth.
Kemudian India.
And how far west do we go? Should India be included?
Kemudian yang lain-lainnya lagi.
And other countries.
Pakistan.
Consider Pakistan, for example.
Jadi oleh karena itu tidak semudah secara teoritis melaksanakan itu.
So that's why we have always said, it's not so easy to implement it's a good idea, but it's not easy to implement that idea.
Tapi saya yakin ini kita akan sampai juga pada satu ketika.
But I'm sure we will reach the point where we can have such a wider regional organization.
Nah, untuk ini perlu konsultasi terus-menerus.
And therefore we need to consult each other continuously on this score.
Excellency, I think we have time for one or two more questions. If there's somebody that's missed the first question, otherwise Warren Duncan and perhaps David Barnett. Warren Duncan.
Warren Duncan, ABC. Dr. Malik, to go back to the oil question again, you said that there's no way that you can increase your production of oil on a short term. Does Indonesia intend, though, to use oil as a political and diplomatic weapon in a way that a number of Middle East countries with whom you have affinity have announced that they will?
Kita memang berbeda dengan negara-negara produser minyak di Middle East. Sebab Indonesia nomor 1 produksinya jauh di bawah negara-negara Middle East.
Well, there is a slight difference in the conditions of Indonesia and the Middle East producers of oil in this respect, which I would like to point out. Firstly, we do not produce as much as the Middle East countries do.
Yang kedua, kita sudah sampai sekarang sudah mengadakan kontrak-kontrak jangka panjang dengan macam-macam perusahaan.
Secondly, we have already committed ourselves far ahead to supply oil to certain traditional buyers.
Dan ini minyaknya pun belum bertemu, baru exploration.
And that is oil we haven't even found yet.
Jadi inilah kesukarannya.
So this is one difficulty Indonesia faces.
David, may I be? Further to the question of unfreezing relations with China, is the delay or slowness in this because of reluctance still on your part, or is there now some reluctance on the part of the Chinese to have relations with Indonesia?
Jawab yang sama. Persoalannya prinsipil tidak ada lagi.
As I explained earlier, there are no objections in principles on either side to normalize relations.
Oleh karena hampir 4 jam saya berdebat dengan mereka, bertukar pikiran menurut pandangan kita dan menurut pandangan Peking, sehingga semua persoalan sampai yang sekecil-kecilnya sudah kita jelaskan.
Because at the meeting with Foreign Minister Chi Peng-fai, which I had, we discussed for almost 4 hours all kinds of potential points of friction or views which we may have. And I can tell you that it was an exhaustive discussion, a wide-ranging discussion.
Kemudian kita mengambil konklusi berdua bersama-sama bahwa kita membutuhkan waktu normalisasi.
Then we came to the conclusion, both of us, that we both needed time before proceeding towards normalization of relations.
Apa sebabnya? Sebabnya oleh karena di Indonesia banyak sekali orang warga negara yang berketurunan Cina. Orang Indonesia yang berketurunan Cina.
The reasons for this is, one, in Indonesia there is a large group of people of Chinese descent.
Di Peking banyak orang-orang Cina yang dari Indonesia yang bermukim di sana, yang bertinggal di sana.
In China, there are many Chinese who have once lived in Indonesia and had returned to China.
Sebelumnya itu mereka sudah dikasih tahu harus menjadi warga negara yang loyal di mana mereka mengakui negerinya.
Before that, to both groups, and especially the group in Indonesia, they were told to become good citizens of the countries in which they reside.
Begitu juga di Peking.
Equally so of the Chinese the Chinese from Indonesia who came to Peking.
Karena itu buat warga negara ini diperlukan satu re-education.
And therefore we feel that for these two specific groups, it would be wise to have a re-educational process in order to implant on them again their loyalty towards the country in which they reside.
Jadi berapa lama kita memerlukan re-education ini? Tentu saudara-saudara bisa menimbang bagaimana meyakinkan orang. Apakah 1 hari, apakah 1 tahun, apakah 2 tahun. Itu sebabnya kita tidak membuat time limits.
So as to how much time we will need for this re-educational process, you can imagine for yourself that it will perhaps not be a question of days or weeks. It may take a year or 2 or more.
Begitu juga kita memerlukan memberikan pengertian baru kepada rakyat Indonesia yang ratusan juta ini. Kalau besok lusa kita sudah normalisir hubungan dengan Peking, jangan menimbulkan pertentangan atau kebencian lagi seperti yang sudah.
We also have to prepare the atmosphere in our own country towards the event of normalization, so that when normalization takes place, it can take place in an atmosphere where there is no more hostility or enmity towards one another.
Alasan yang terakhir lagi, Indonesia adalah anggota dari Southeast Asian Nation. Jadi kita sudah bersepakat bahwa akan menormalisir dengan Peking. Indonesia sudah mengadakan diplomatic relation dengan Peking, tetapi 4 negara lainnya belum. Karena itu diberikan kesempatan kepada yang lainnya memulai membuka hubungan dialog dengan Peking.
The third reason is to be found in Indonesia's membership in the ASEAN. As you know, we are with 5 countries there, of which Indonesia is the only one having already diplomatic relations with China, although they are now in a suspended state. The other 4 countries of ASEAN have never had relations with China. So we have agreed, mutually agreed among the countries of ASEAN, that the other ASEAN countries too should be given the opportunity to prepare themselves and to move towards a normalization of China, which will obviously require more than what will be required for Indonesia, already having diplomatic relations.
Jadi untuk ini memerlukan waktu.
This again would require time, especially for the other ASEAN member countries.
Tapi Peking sudah mengetahui bahwa negara-negara di Asia Tenggara sudah melangkah kepada arah normalisasi. Satu. Dan yang kedua, negara-negara di Asia Tenggara tidak ada merasa bermusuhan dengan Peking.
But what is important is that Peking knows now that the ASEAN countries are moving towards normalization, firstly, and secondly, that the ASEAN countries harbor no hostility towards China.
Yang terakhir tentu masing-masing negara ini mempersiapkan penjagaan segala kemungkinan keamanan negerinya.
So what is left is only preparation within each country in order for themselves to secure the right atmosphere and the security which each country would feel would be needed for the event of normalization.
Thank you very much. I think we've now exhausted the questions, and I now call on a past President, Mr. Harry Rayner, to move a vote of thanks.
Dr. Malik, you have been doubly welcome as a visitor to the National Press Club today. Of course, in your official capacity, but again, as an old, sympathetic and valued friend of journalists and journalism. The club is honoured that you found time to visit them today, and I ask members and their guests to join formally in showing their appreciation of that visit.